let's see what the current scenario is going to be. This is the Barbarossa scenario. We went through the rules that we need research and production not used, forces. Okay. Fall of 1941, I have to set up some additional units that are going to come in. These are the Russian-Siberian garrison transfer. German withdrawals will be listed in a little thing. Okay, so navies are not going to be normally used, but what we have is a set of destroyers available in each of the 2 pieces of water that's available there, and this can generate air combats, etc. We'll worry about these as they happen. Okay, so the Barbarossa scenario gives you 3 different flavors depending on how long a game you want to play. I'm doing this as an exploration of the land combat system, so I think I'm going to be doing this smallest scenario, but we'll see, you know. Russia's going to be unprepared during the first, and this is the key. So there's a Russian-German tension level in a world at war, and one of the key factors to it is if it gets above a certain value, the Russians are more prepared for war, and in this case they're not really prepared because it's 41. If you waited until 42 in a regular world at war game, you would end up probably exceeding that value. So the Russian armor that are adjacent to Axis controlled hexes at the start of the game have no zone of control. And Russian armor which are not adjacent, no, we didn't go over that, to Axis control hexes only cost 1 extra movement point to move through their zone of control. What's the normal effect? I don't know, because I can't flip through this rule book with only one hand. Okay. But we'll find out in this exploration. During the Axis movement phase in regular combat, Russian infantry in eastern Poland, the Baltic, and Russia that are overrun or attacked by at least 1 armor unit have a -1 DM. Remember that defensive multiplier generally brings you up to double your strength if there's no other factors in play, and stuff like the river line is going to help. So this is a major factor towards weakening the defenses on that first turn. Unless they're in an objective or IC, and other DMs apply normally to such attacks, it does not affect the Finnish border hexes, Bessarabia, or conquered Balkan countries, which might have been a reason to deploy up into here instead of right in the fortress, because there's some potential I could lose the fortress. Unfortunately, I get a die modifier from the woods, so that hex becomes much more important, so I'll deploy in there instead. During the Axis player turn, Russian air units have their air nationality die roll modifier lowered by 1. I'm going to be less capable of air attacks. It doesn't give me the complete air impotence that Whiff does on the first impulse. During the Russian player turn following the Axis attack, Russian armor have their movement factor of 2, and Russian infantry units have a movement factor of 1. Specialized units move normally, so I have a harder time reacting to that initial attack. No other country faces this, only Russia has this particular surprise effect. This is, again, you know, one of the factors in the game. Every single country is kind of they're all called out in very specific fashions for every single thing that people could tweak and tinker with. There's no real coherent system here. It's just a bunch of special rules put together on top of, you know, the core system that existed. And some of that is because some of these rules came into effect in early incarnations, and then they couldn't step back and generalize what that would be, like the whiff initial impulse surprise, and instead ended up, you know, trying to come up with, okay, this belongs here. Russia's going to be surprised, but nobody else is. Well, okay, no, wait, the U.S. will be surprised at Pearl Harbor. You know, that kind of incorporation, instead of making a general rule from the pattern. Okay, so Russia had to place their fort first. They get one in. I want to say St. Petersburg, Leningrad, and then I put one down here in Smolensk because this looks like the gateway. Not historical, but I'm hoping to be able to defend there and be at least a significant speed bump. We'll see how that works. Then the Germans and Axis units all get set up, and then the Russians set up the remainder of their units. And then, of course, I find the units that I didn't set up and add them to the map. Germany moves first. That's actually the case. The Axis moves first all the time in a world at war. I don't remember. I think Advanced Third Reich still had the old Third Reich system, which was at the beginning of each turn, you compared the BRPs, and whoever had the most BRPs on their side went first. That created some really weird gamey situations. It was kind of neat because it showed the shift in initiative in the war as a whole, but it didn't really work when moved to 2 theaters, and I think this fixing it to an I go, you go straight up, it actually works better if you're not going to go with something much more complicated. Nobody can attack certain places. The Persian route's going to open up in spring of 42, and then this is just going to tell me when my I'm going to be getting money lent to me through Murmansk in the first turn, and it's in chart form here. So then here we've got the initial setup, and then reinforcements that are reinforcements that are due to come are also included in that initial setup. And then here's some other capabilities. They get a fort in September of 42. They're going to get more things. Now, ICs, I only have 9 here, but I start getting additional ones. And for some reason, I have 10 out. Something led me to think that I had to have 10. I don't know what it was, but they clearly start with 9 there. Yeah, I'm not sure why I have an extra one out. But as they get these, they get to put them wherever they like, pretty much. Well, no, in a city or whatever. But obviously, I'm going to tuck them behind the Urals over here. Any other special rules? I really need to. Yeah, I should go over the victory points. Oh, I'm going to get Murmansk. In the first turn, I get 5 extra BRPs, and then 10 each turn afterwards. The victory conditions are based on the historical situation. So, you know, once you kind of achieve a position, you might want to more fortify and build up a defensive location there. That's one of the problems with the old Third Reich system as a whole. It never really drives you to go beyond getting to a good defensive position as Germany at least, and kind of locking in your position. In a way, that actually works better towards driving the history in Japan, and honestly, it doesn't work that terribly as Germany, but your mindset is towards that from the beginning if you're really a competitive player, rather than towards, can I take out Britain? You know, those tasks can be done, and they can help your situation greatly, but some players will just avoid any thought of really trying to push the war to a conclusion, or at least push further than they would otherwise. I find that kind of an issue in this system. Even when you have things like high watermarks, though, I prefer to really have the goals that the country should have at any given time, which is I want to win the war to begin with, at least with Germany. Japan knew they couldn't at some levels. Anyway, so we have these values, and if I ended in winter of 41, which is very likely, the Germans have to get to 8 of these red spaces that are on the eastern map, and I can't go attacking Turkey or anything like that. I start with some of them already. I don't know how many. They're hard to find, even though the hexes are bigger than they were in Third Reich. This map actually covers about the same amount of territory as Third Reich, a little bit more, but it's significantly larger. The old Third Reich map would have covered, would have left out a whole panel in 2 sides, which would, sometimes I actually think about, gee, I wish I could take my Third Reich map and play on that instead, because it has somewhat smaller hexes, but it covers most of the stuff. Well, I don't think it would work very well, but always one of my thoughts. All right, let's get underway at some point. Okay, so I've completed setup as far as I can tell by putting, these are not reinforcements per se, they're construction pool, force pool increments for the most part. The one exception is the forces over here, which maybe I should turn upside down so I remember, are the Siberian reinforcements, which will just come right on the map. The other units are going to have to be paid for and built each turn. And somewhere I should have BRPs for Russia. Yeah, they start with a BRP level of 154. Unfortunately, I don't have a track for that, so I'll just be keeping that on paper, because this game no longer, so it gives the amount of support that the old Third Reich gave in terms of tracking the BRPs with counters. I could pull out the old stuff, but then I don't have counters for it, and I'd have to pull out new counters and everything. It's just, they made some decisions to make a cheaper product, essentially, in a lot of directions. All right, well, let's get started. I guess the Germans go first. We can skip through most of this. Voluntary elimination of units, I don't think I want to do that. So now I can move. And here I have to worry. The Germans, I don't think, have to pay for offensives, because I don't see they only have 40 BRPs each turn for construction, and there doesn't seem to be any statement that I've seen about their ability to do other stuff. But clearly they'd be spending the 15 a turn on their actual attacks. So now, well, let's look at movement. Placement of airbase counters. You can follow this very specifically, and I'll do that at the start, but I'll probably get sloppier as I go and get used to the system again. It's going to be fairly easy for the land system. Really, you're allowed to recycle airbase units, and the Germans have the capability to recycle 2 each turn. Staging air units, I could push them forward. Well, I don't own this territory that I'd want to advance into, so I set up where I want it to be. Now I get the choice on counter air missions. Now, I saw something here which confuses me. Russian combat training increases to 2. Russians' air nationality DRM increases to 2. I'm going to have to look those up. I guess they were worse than I thought they were to begin with. So I'll back away and do that while I figure out what my options are. Because the CRT combat training level of 1 has some significant problems that I wasn't expecting to see in this scenario. Fortunately, that information was not called out in the scenario book. They didn't want to bloat that for some reason. But it is here under nationality modifiers and CTLs for CTLs, not for nationality. The air nationality is not listed there, but the starting CTL does indicate that only Germany, Finland, Sweden, Vaslovs, Japan, and Communist China have a 2 rating. And that's important because, well, it's not that big a deal. It means Russians only get 1 round of combat. But if for some reason they get their CTL dropped by 1, and I think maybe they do in the surprise round, have to look that up again. Yeah, it's going to be hard to get started. That's the real thing. They still get a multiplier, their die roll modifier. You only go down to you get your -1 if you only have a CTL of 0. I'm sorry. And on the air nationality chart, oh no, that's the naval nationality chart. Shit, I was hoping I found the air nationality because I had the air defense table, I guess. Here we go. You can see Russia has a 1 air nationality chart. That's essentially just going to be a die roll modifier on the air combat table. Okay, let's look at surprise effects again, because we've forgotten what the scenario effects are. And, you know, eventually we'll actually get started, right? Russian armor. Okay, so I get a -1 DM if I'm in Eastern Poland, the Baltic states, or Russia, and I'm attacked by at least 1 Russian armored unit, unless I'm in an objective hex or IC. This doesn't apply to Finnish border hexes, which is why I moved the Russians up there. I remember doing that. And the air units have their air nationality reduced by 1, from 1 to 0. I don't think that has any particular effect other than the modifier. So I probably want to counter air. Is that what I'm doing? Yeah, and I'll be resolving those. So I kind of want to knock out where the Russian planes are. Now in the old system, I would just send 1 German factor for every Russian factor I wanted to knock out. So I'd hit these planes, I'd hit these planes. And let's see how well that works. It might end up leaving some face up, which it wouldn't have in the old system, but I like a little bit more randomness in my game. And these guys are just too far away from any planes. I probably set them up kind of stupidly, but hey, I didn't know where the Russians were going to set up. This is mostly a legal setup. It might be missing something on some small scale, but you are mostly able to avoid that engaging with the Germans down here. Okay, well, now I guess I have to go look up the counter rules to make sure I kind of get it right. I think I know what they are, but I want to be kind of certain that I'm starting correctly. So let's do one of these and then we'll peel back. So we've got, you know, 5 German versus 5 Russian air units. We'll have the Germans attack first. Now the air nationality DRM is going to be a 2-point difference because the Germans have a 2, the Russians do not have any because of the surprise turn. We don't have any jets, it's not a cap, there's no radar involved. So what we're going to be doing is looking at 5 strength points versus a 2 die roll plus 2 to the die roll. Okay, so I get a 6-8. So I'm going to kill 2 and abort 4. And I probably ought to mark that somehow. Alright, we'll temporarily do it this way. So the abortions don't count if I didn't hit anything. So what we got here is 2 dead. Now these go over and join the force pool, which would normally be on a card in the old version. And I'm going to flip these guys over. They're not actually flipped. They're all in the battle. Well, let's see what they do back. So there's 5 Russians, and they're at -2 because they have a 0 compared to a 2 national. So they get a 6, make it a 4. They get a 1 and a 3. And that's going to hit and kill one of these Germans. Which, I don't know, I'll put over here. And then 3 are aborted out of 4. That means 3 of them are going back to base. So the 1 remaining air unit's not strong enough to take on the 3 that are left here. However, I got enough abort results that I flipped everyone. So now I can just pull back 1, 2, 3, and I think that'll be where I go. And now I'm used, so I flip over. And I'll conduct combats here too. So we actually got exactly the kind of results we would have expected. Well, so in the old Third Reich, I don't think they had the quality modifiers. So 5 planes hitting 5 planes would have caused some set number of casualties. I don't remember how many. And both sides would be flipped. I don't remember the calculation, but it was deterministic. But here, we got some die rolls, and we got essentially the same effect. We took less losses and ended up flipping the enemy, which is good as far as I'm concerned. Total losses, the Russians took 8 over the 3 hexes that got airstruck, and the Germans took 4. And I could consolidate those if I wanted to. Now comes the interesting thing. If we were playing, as I understand it, I could unflip these German units using oil. 1 oil will unflip 25 factors or something like that. That's huge. But for this scenario, oil is not tracked in this scenario. I don't know if that means they just have infinite. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Obviously, they're not going to get their penalties, but shouldn't they have oil that they can expend? Because they have plenty, they have presumably other oil available. If that's the case, though, I could keep on flipping my units and using them again and again. Now, maybe I couldn't use them multiple times in the counter-air phase. I'm not convinced of that one way or the other. I'd have to look that up. And for Russian oil, their oil is not tracked until the Russians take an oil center. It's not tracked seems to mean I can't see any reason why it's not just you have infinite oil. So I'm going to uninvert all my units. I assume I have to do all my counter airs at once, so I can only use each plane once for that. But that gives me a little bit more flexibility. And in between any 2 phases in the sequence of play, I guess I can unflip. The way it's worded, it's not really clear. I might be able to fly more counter airs, but that would seem unreasonable to me. So now we jump down from that counter air all the way down supply determination. I think we can agree we're in supply. We can trace this stuff. So we're not going to worry about any of this. We don't have to worry about using oil counters yet. Air and sea transport. I could do an invasion or something. I don't see that as terribly valuable, say, invading here. I think I'm just going to try to do this as a land war for now. We might change our mind in another scenario, but ground unit movement and execution of overruns. Well, overruns is going to be tough. But basically, you know, I'm just going to be moving my counters. Now I have to worry because somewhere we have all kind of things. So rivers. ZOCs don't extend across them. Effect on combat, can't be taken for attrition. A unit defending gets a +1 DRM, which can be negated by an airborne drop onto those units, which maybe we'll do. Any other terrain here? We got swamps here, which costs an extra movement factor, and it affects breakthrough chances. Swamp hexes can't be taken for attrition. They get a bonus. Frozen swamps count as clear. Anything else we really need? I don't think ports have any effect on anything. Seaborne invasion. Any other terrain here? We got some forests up ahead, which cost extra movement, and they cannot be taken by attrition. Wow. And they give a +1 DRM. You know, some of this terrain, this is new to, I think it existed in Advanced Third Reich, but I'm not sure. But in the old Third Reich, there was just kind of rough and not rough. Nowhere near this level of detail. Anything else I'm likely to worry about? Objectives, which give no real advantage in and of themselves. So, you know, I gotta start calculating. And what's my overrun number? I think it was 6-1. So we're facing, you know, 4 here. What was the scenario effect again? I can't remember anything. Russian air units. This one. Russian infantry that are attacked or overrun by armor have a -1 DRM unless they're in an objective or thingy. Now, being behind the river line gives me a protection though, so I think I'm going to be facing doubled units no matter what, right? Unless the CTL is reduced as well. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of overruns. I've got the biggest stack I can create is like a 6, and the smallest stack I'm going to face is probably a 4. No, the biggest stack is an 8. So that's, you know, only 2-1. So we're not going to see any overruns taking place. I'm just going to move my units forward because I can't really do that on vid. Jesus, I don't know what this line is here, but the Nazi-Soviet Pact line runs over here. I guess this is actually the Russian-Polish border. So I set up completely wrong. Alright, guess it's time to start all over, huh? I don't know if I have the heart for this. I think I may just continue with this kind of broken situation, because the goal here isn't necessarily to simulate anything. The goal is to test out the systems, and I really don't want to cope with it. The visual layout, you know, it didn't work for me. This tiny little dotted line was not at all in my vision. I should have remembered it from the old game, but man, I can't. Alright, so we'll just continue on and we'll say, well, you know, the Russians never took Poland. They never took the eastern Poland section that they historically had. Well, now I've finished my land movement, and yes, I'm further north than I could possibly be, and those airstrikes couldn't have happened, some of them, just because I would have been back behind here. I would be able I think to do interceptions of defensive ground attacks, though. They would have been within range. But what's important about this is I got my oil reflips, so I've got, you know, a lot more capability. Now the next thing we hit here is down to the combat phase, because there's really nothing going on here. And I have to announce all my land-based air and naval missions. Well, this is where things get kind of tricky, because I got to figure out what my odds on all my attacks are and what I want to make. And I have not just this air here, but I also have a paratrooper who can help me break the bridge. 1, 2, 3, 4 here. I'm probably going to fly that. Now the Russians don't get a chance to unflip their units. You only get to do that during your own turn. Hence, counter air is actually of some value, right? Otherwise, I'd just be shooting up units. So I definitely want to make that, but I also have to figure out the odds on each of these attacks and how to allocate my air units. And, you know, that's just something that I'll be doing. Wow, why do I only have 1 unit here? That's interesting. Huh. Well, I've also set up my armor, so I've got armored units attacking in a couple of places with another armored unit or stack of armored units behind it who can exploit. That'll give them, you know, an additional opportunity to cause some havoc behind the Russian lines. Across the whole front, I'm doing this kind of activity. So I count up these guys. I've got 6, 10, 13, 16, 17 strength points here. If I counted right. Sounds pretty weak. 10, 13, 16, 17 for the airdrop. And I'm facing 4 defensive points. Now that 4 points, there's +2 DRM, +1 just for being there, and +1 for the river line I'm trying to cross. But there's armor attacking, which takes 1 away. So that 4 strength points is an 8. And what did I say? I came up with a number that doesn't work for what I was hoping. 6, 10, 13, 16, 17. versus 8, well, that's going to be a 2-to-1 attack, which is all fine and dandy, but I would like to do better than that if I could. Now, the problem with the doing better than that is I got to figure out my air strength. So I could throw 4 air points in from here in Königsberg, and that could hit, and that would add it up to 21. Well, 21 doesn't help me, and look, I don't think there are 3-to-2s or anything like that here. Uh-oh, do I have a land attack table? Yeah, I do. So yeah, it goes from 1-to-1 to 2-to-1, and then to 3-to-1. So there's, you know, no real reason to throw more forces in. So right now 17 sounds pretty good, but I could throw more in. So if I threw these 4 in, that gets me up to 21, and 3 more from here gets me up to 24. So then I have 3-to-1. Now to get that 3 more from here, I have to break this up, and I'd have to turn it into a 3 and a 1, send 3 up. But in order to make that decision, I have to figure out, do I need this air for other attacks? So I'm kind of looking at an attack here. Now this is pretty big. The DRM for the armor is full strength. It doesn't get affected, so I may not even be able to attack where I set up to do so. That's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's 1-to-1. Now I could throw a lot of air in to get that to 2-to-1, and that sounds probably reasonable because I would like to breach the line there. So I would need 13 air to get there. I don't have that kind of air capability. I have like 7 here. A 1-to-1 attack is not pleasant. You can see I can get this, all of my units are eliminated. So I kind of screwed up. We'll say that kind of makes up partially for the loss that we took. Here I set up armor to attack in this hex, and again I'm hitting stupid armor. I wasn't not careful. Wow, there's armor all over here. Okay, so here I've got 7, 10, 13 hitting 3 tripled is 9, 10, 11. So I would need something like 8 points of air power. I might be able to get that there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So, oh, it looks like I only have 7 in these 2 hexes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. We definitely don't want to do that if that's all we had, but we have some more air down here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can throw an extra point in there. Now what about this attack? Well, this attack's a 5, 10 on defense, and I've got 8, 16. It'll only take 4 to crack that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not going to get there. 1, 2, 3. Oh shit. So I can either make my 2-to-1 here or up here. Well, we've already allocated the 1. My air power down here isn't able to reach. And my attack here would only be 4 to 4. That would be a 1-to-1 attack. I have some additional air, but not enough. Too bad I didn't have the Hungarians set up here where they belong. Alright, well, that's easy enough to cheat. We can fly these planes. 1, 2, 3, 4 here. And that'll get me a 2-to-1 attack there, I think. But otherwise, this is going to be pretty crappy as a start. Well, let's see what else is on here. Counter air could happen during combat. It didn't. Land-based air attacks on naval units. Defender announces naval and air interception. He doesn't have any planes available. He has one here. 1, 2, 3, 4. He can't reach. I could intercept defensive air support. Okay, well, I didn't have to declare an attack here, so the defender can actually fly a plane here, because that one's not flipped over. I'm going to do that. For whatever reason, it may give me some advantage, because I'm not worried about oil at all. I don't have to worry about it getting flipped. Okay, we have no air combat going on between bombers. Announce and resolve airdrops. Okay, well, I guess this guy who's up in the air, I get to announce that he's resolving. And we look, and interestingly enough, they don't give you any rule connection there. What I did with whiff was I wrote those in. Here, it's such a large sequence of play, and the index is good enough. I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to just go look up airdrops. I don't think there's anything to it, to tell you the truth, so we'll just skip that and not worry about looking that up. So, now we resolve ground combat, including seaboard invasions. For each, we designate the attacking and defending. We do blah, 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 and then we're going to roll. All right, let's take care of this one here. Now, I said I could throw this in, right? That would only get me to 21. That's not good enough. Screw it. I mean, I don't want to... So I have a 2-to-1 attack here, if I recall correctly. I have like 17 to 8. So, we'll see what we get out of it. This is going to be very non-impressive. Okay, we got something terrible. We got a little a, which says the attacker loses a number of factors equal to half the modified value of the defender's units, taking into account the defender's DRM. The DRM, the defender had like 8 strength points here. This was a powerful force. So I have to lose 4 points of value. I hate to lose my paratroopers. I can't afford to lose my armor, though. And I didn't send any planes in. This would be a reason to send planes in. So yeah, we'll lose our paratroopers. These guys aren't really doing anything. 2, 3, 4. They're back. So these are losses for this turn, but they weren't out of supply. So they can be rebuilt. Okay. Let's fight another round. Our odds aren't as good, but we have a die roll modifier. So we have 7, 10, 13 to 8. That's only 1-to-1, but now we have a +1 modifier to the die roll because this is our second round of combat. We can only do 2 rounds, I think. And this time we roll a 5, which is going to be an exchange -2. Exchange -2 says, same, except the defender's modifier is reduced by 2. Okay, so the defender, we're going to make an exchange here. The defender loses 4 strength points, which is his entire force, and we also have to lose 4 strength points. If I lose the armor, I can't exploit. My exploit isn't very good, so I'll take the loss on the armor. We cross over, and I get a bridgehead, which are generic. And that doesn't give me a whole hell of a lot in terms of advantages, but there's no reason to lose it or to not take it. All right, well, we have, we were looking at an attack here, but that didn't look like it was going to happen. 7, 10 now. 7, 10, 16 to a lot. Okay, so we'll go over here. We had one here. 7, 10, 13, 21 to 9, 11. Oh, you got to be kidding me. Looks like 21 to 11. I screwed up and didn't count right. Well, that's the problem with, you know, these kind of games. And it's always a problem with the Third Reich because it has this 7, 10, 13, 17, 21. No doubt. Well, that just sucks. Okay, well, this is the cost for playing this kind of game, right? You know, in Whiff, there's an option that allows you to kind of round combat results so you don't have to do all this pre-calculation. Well, screw that, man. I'm making a 1-to-1 attack because that's all I got. All right, Russia, the German army's destroyed. Excellent. This is, you know, why I'm playing, is to make mistakes and kind of realize how much I hate pure odds-based systems where it's just counting. Okay, so there goes the German army there. And we did not want to make an attack here, did we? Wow, we have a lot of strength points there. 16 to 10, 11. Yeah, no real reason. I mean, we've lost already, basically. All right. And now you got to start kind of allocating your forces. And, you know, I mean, this is just stupidity, but I've seen people play this kind of way. Allocate the forces that are on your force pool card that no longer exists, so that you can, you know, rebuild them a little later. Okay, well, that was my combat phase, and I'm really bad at counting odds when you got to pre-count them and set them up like this, and I just can't go back. Oh yeah, I was making a 2-to-1 here. I cheated for that. 4, 8. Let's see if we actually have it. We do. There's only 4 here. No. Sorry, I lied. There's no armor attacking, particularly no German armor, so that is not a 2-to-1. That's a 1-to-1. All right, screw it, man. These are only Romanians. There's not much to gain by making this attack, though, so I'm just going to fly these guys back. I moved through this hex. I can return to base there. The other planes, where? Oh, they got destroyed. Great. Awesome. Okay. So we just did our combat. We'd have exploitation if we had succeeded in getting an armored unit to advance, but we did not, so we're just screwed. And you can see the Germans are just dying. I don't know if I did something wrong here, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like the Russian line behind that river was just too potent. What I'm thinking is this would be the border, so the Russians would be 1, 2, 3, 4. They'd be in front of the Dnieper, and this is showing the power of being behind the Dnieper and behind the river line everywhere, and how strong that is. Wow, that made a big difference. Of course, in WIF, the surprise attack turn, the big deal there is the river doesn't help you. So it gives you a really good reason to not be deployed behind it, so you can fall back behind it after you get trashed. So we really have nothing that happens here. And then we're going to go to unit construction, where the Germans have 40 points to rebuild their units. And they have this every turn, basically, for the entire scenario. So we'll give them that chance. Construction's a quick little calculation exercise. Infantry costs 1 each. I don't necessarily want to build all my infantry, but let's see what else. Armor costs 2 each. I definitely need the armor. So that's 16 points there. That's the air that I saw. That's 6 times 3 is 18 more, so I'm at 34. I don't even get all my infantry. I thought I did. 8 times 2 is 16. And 18 is 34, and 6 is 40, yeah. So these are going to get built in Germany. Well, East Prussia is part of Germany. Built the armor up there, and not that I have any hope of cutting through anywhere. Over here, build these guys. I can build the air in East Prussia, and I have to kind of shift my points around to do this because I have too many points. They're not well allocated, so I'm going to have to play with the change there. And that'll be my construction. Down here actually, and then I get to do my redeployments. I'm not sure how many of them I get. It may be infinite, I don't remember. I think I screwed up in another way. I found another air point under here. It wasn't just 4 there, there was an extra one that I had used from the counter arrows or whatever that was back here. And that ended up, maybe that could have helped me. I don't think so. I don't think I had enough to improve the odds here, and that's the one place I succeeded. What the hell's this? Oh, this is the air unit that I... Oh, that's my air transport. Okay, never mind. Which actually I don't think can be based here because it counts as an extra air unit because I put an extra strength in here. So I don't know, but without an air thingy. I don't know what the hell. When can I redeploy? Yeah, I gotta look up the redeployment because I may only be allowed to have 4 air units there because of that thing. A limit to tactical redeployment. There is a limit to strategic redeployment, and I found that and looked it up, and then forgot it. And now I gotta face that big book again and look it up again. It's really a pain in the ass because you can't leave the book open. Any way to do that, you'll be breaking the spine on it. It's really a horrible production decision to make it like that. I can't just backfold it like I can with your normal rule book, even a very thick rule book, not that thick. But this could have been divided into several normal printings instead of normal heavy wargame printings rather than this one massive bound book, which I'm sure wasn't cheaper than your normal way of just a couple of staples for binding. Got a little confused here, not a surprise, in the sequence of play, which if I delicately lift the rules and try to look, somewhere in here it says something, uninvert air and naval units up to the uninversion limits. Well, I thought everything got uninverted at the end of the turn. Okay, well, if I read this carefully, each oil counter used by an alliance faction in addition to whatever they use to offset can be used to uninvert additional air or naval factors at normal construction cost, or construct additional BRPs of units at normal construction cost, up to a total of 25 air or naval factors. Doesn't really say when. Uninvert all air factors at the start of the player turn, and if used again at the end of the player turn. That's going to allow me, I have to use oil to use that, I guess. I'm not sure. And then uninvert an additional 50 naval factors at any point during the turn. Now, I thought I saw something that gave an example. Maybe it was the naval, but I thought it was air, where you could just spend them when you want it. I certainly cheated if that's the case, but the results were not impressive. And now this is the uninversion and exploitation rules, and it's got rules about redeployment, because if you redeploy, I guess, oil counters used to uninvert air and naval units must come from an oil reserve. During the oil adjustment phase, they must be in certain places. During or after initial supply determination, they must be in other places. I swear I saw something that seemed to allow you to uninvert air units at any time, which is why I stated that. Again, I can't trace through the rules while I'm going through them, so I have to kind of just absolutely remember them because this rule book is so crappily designed in terms of the physical design. I'm about halfway through, so this actually... So wait, here it is. No, if an oil counter is used by an alliance faction to offset air oil effect, the alliance faction may uninvert 25 land-based air units at any time during its player turn, which doesn't seem to coalesce with this. Maybe I couldn't use additional oil factors to do that. That's what I would guess, but I don't think I did more than 25 air factors, so I guess I'm okay there. Which means I'm done with the German side of the turn, and I'll go over to the Russian side. And we'll try to get that all on this one tape. So the results we're seeing here provide for something very interesting, which is the Russian garrison. The rules for that, as far as I can tell, I haven't looked at Gathering Storm's rules to see if they modify it heavily. But if there's a Russian garrison requirement, it is essentially what the Russians faced here. Yeah. We should be unflipping units, I believe. God knows how to find it in all this stuff. But anyway, the situation that we see in this scenario, that I mistakenly fell to, I think can be engineered in Gathering Storm by simply not taking, what would it be, East Poland, I guess. Because there are a number of places where I would not be within 4 hexes of the river now, or of the enemy territory. Likewise, Bessarabia. If I don't take Bessarabia, that gets me a little bit further back that I can deploy my garrison-ready troops. I probably cheated. I don't know. I don't know if all the armor had to be up in the front. I think it did, and that means this unit is kind of cheating. But either way, this kind of river line defense on the Dnieper is apparently incredibly effective. Granted, I made other screw-ups, but I'm pretty unimpressed with what the Germans managed because of it. And now, you know, my Russians are in a fairly solid position. They're not going to be surprise attacked. The Dnieper has only, well, actually the Dnieper hasn't been crossed, but whatever we have up here, we don't have a little name on it, I don't think, has been breached, but the terrain up there around Lake Peipus is not the most comfortable stuff to try to accomplish a massive advance through. So we've got some interesting situations here, and I think the Russians are going to try to assimilate, consolidate their position. I don't really have an opportunity to move this, I don't think. There's no zone of control there, so I could just kind of push into this space and stretch out a little bit more, and that might work pretty well. But I'm facing 3 units. They'll be doubled there as 6. My air power will help me, you know, unflip these. I don't know. I can't find, or haven't bothered to find what I've got. But the problem is the Germans can counter-air anything that I try to do. So I'm not really going to be able to succeed in getting a big strength point gain with my air power. There's German planes in range of that whole section. But what I'm thinking is, if this is close to as effective as a Russian defense of this nature would normally be, I don't think the Russians want East Poland and or Bessarabia. I think they want to force, you know, they want to let the Germans have that territory because their garrison requirements actually give them a defensive benefit. The disadvantage, of course, is, look, you know, when you're playing the campaign game, East Poland's worth like 10 points. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. This is the line that shows to me. I can barely see this thing. East Poland's worth like 10 points. Bessarabia's worth 5. These are points you don't want to give up. Oh, you know what I forgot? I forgot completely about these guys. Could they have launched an effective attack? 2, 4, 6, 8. We got a fortress here. Or no, we don't. We have woods. 2, 4, 6, 8 to 3, 6. We would not have had a 2-to-1 odds there, and I can't really give up the Finns. And that's all my units. No, I can't even attack across here. There's a lake there. Yep. This would be 1-to-1. No, sorry. So that's wood, so it would normally go up to a 3 DRM, but goes back by, no, it doesn't go back by 1. Yeah, I got no chance of moving anything there. Yeah, strangely, the uninversion is listed at the beginning and end of turn, and the end of turn uninversion has a space for it in this sequence, but I can't find one at all in the beginning of the turn that's supposed to be there. Certainly not before the movement phase. I've kind of phased through here. I expected it in the oil section, or maybe actually here. Yeah, at the very beginning. This is all dip stuff. I don't see any indication that complies with the way the rules are written. Maybe I'm misreading it, but it says uninvert all air factors at the start of the player turn, and if used again, all at the end of the player turn. Now, how that fits with, yeah, it looks like those are free, unless maybe this says something different. I mean, you know, the rules are like this. I'm beginning to see, maybe not everywhere, but I'm beginning to find little places where it's like, what the hell are they talking about? And, you know, I mean, writing a rule book this size is always a problem, but I don't remember having these problems with A3R. Anyway, let us figure out what, if anything, the Russians are going to do to move. And not a whole hell of a lot going on here. The Russians just pulled back over here. A little bit of reorganization along the line, just to smooth out, make this a little stronger. Built a couple of units up in Leningrad, not that that matters too much. And then over here, I'm probably not going to lose Leningrad to the Finns. That pulls us to fall. And all right, let's load this up as the first move, but I'm probably just going to go to the end of 41. You know what? We're going to make this a longer video. Screw it. Because I don't really feel like playing out, you know, from this situation. I think the Germans are just hosed for forever because of this damn river line. If the Russians can defend behind that. And you see that in older versions of World in Flames where the Russians aren't forced to defend forward. Third Reich, they always had some kind of restriction where they had to be forward to some extent, I think. This is just too tough to crack with, you know, a full Russian army in place. With the balance of production and the moving forward of German air units, I actually was able to really airstrike the hell out, or counter-air the hell out of their stuff. And so I get 25 for my first oil, and then I can spend additional oil, so, you know, everything's automatically unflipped again. And this does not feel at all the way I remember Third Reich or Advanced Third Reich playing in this regard. These oil counters are making it really, really potent to push things forward. I actually probably wanted to cycle this air base up closer. So let's put it here and have one of these air units land a little closer instead. Now, of course, though, you know, my army is so much weaker than it should be, and I'm facing this solid river line everywhere except here, so we'll see what we can do. We haven't gained much, if anything. We got one objective hex. Now, we need 8, but we start with some, which means counting problem. We have to find the line between the two maps. So we have 1, 2, 3, I guess 4. I don't know. So we need to find 4 more by the end of the year. Another screw up. I realized I forgot to do any kind of combat for the Russians. That's okay, it's not cheating, but I should have been doing an attrition combat. It wouldn't be very big. It would have been along here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 25, okay, it would have been big. 31, 36, 41, 44, 48, 49, 50 points, and I would have been rolling on here. Now, difference in CTLs, I think it's just 1 point because there's no special penalty. And difference in winter preparation wouldn't happen. So I'd have been looking at this, rolling a couple of dice or 1 die. Shit, I don't know. You know, it doesn't tell you. And that means that I have to go look in the big rule book again and thus put down this, because the rule book is designed so that I can't look at things one-handed. It would be a single die, and I'd be at a -1. So what would have happened is with a 0, 2 counters and 1 hex, I would have been able to gain a hex. I don't think there was one I wanted to take. Well, I couldn't take this because of the bridgehead. So there really wasn't anything I wanted to take. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cost the Germans a couple of these points. The problem is I had extra German points. I don't remember. I think it was 2 extra points. So I'll put these back on the board. They would have been able to be constructed. Although honestly they wouldn't be here because I didn't have the SRs for that. They'd be, say, in Breslau. It doesn't really make much difference. Those guys are really only there to take casualties as attrition units. Actually, where I'd like to place them is if I had a beach over here. I don't want to put them in Königsberg because that's too valuable a location, being right up near the front where I can build good units and push them forward. So I'll continue with my movement. The net effect was probably nothing, to tell you the truth. I would not have taken a hex because you have to advance into it, and I would not have. I did almost minimal damage. Look at this hex, which is where I'm going to launch my attack from, because I've got armor all over back here that I can exploit all around behind the Russian line if I get through there. And this kind of feels a little like Hitler's war when it works out this way. You make the strike against, you know, one key little hex. It's one reason why in Third Reich you sometimes see a double line of defense. If the Russians can afford to keep a double line of fair-sized units defending, that's great. But at this point in the game, they can't do that. So I've got like 24 strength points against 8 here. The river doesn't give me any DRM because I'm attacking from the other side of the river as well. I could throw some air in. There's sort of a why the hell not, because I've got unlimited oil and I can keep on flipping things, and I can't believe that's the case, but that seems to be what it works out as for this scenario. If I just did the 24 to 8 though, that gets me a 3 to 1, and that's a pretty good chance of just wiping it out right away. And remember, I get another round of combat, so after I hit it the first round, that's going to create a breakthrough here, and then I can come exploiting around behind. This will just get deleted. It doesn't cost anything. I've got another planned attack coming in here where I think I'll be needing air power to get through, because these guys are tripled. So that's 12 strength points here, and I've got a kind of weaker units facing them. So we'll see how that works out. Got another 8 points of air units, and I can recharge them. I'm going to be committing all my air units to this attack as well. I just haven't moved them there, but theoretically they're there. It's just the Russians have no defensive air, so it's not a big deal. So I succeeded in capturing this hex. Now I have to advance with the armor, and I'll advance with this unit. And that gets me not a bridgehead. We already got one of those, but a breakthrough, which is marked here, which means all the armor adjacent to armor that attacked. And I could have actually, no, I don't have an armor there. I don't know. I was supposed to have an armor here. Let's leave a unit behind here. All of these are now exploiting armor. This guy was involved in the attack, so he will not be exploiting. And they're going to get an extra special movement phase that cuts down here. Now let's see if we get an exploit down here. I set up kind of unfortunately. It turns out I have 35 to 12 there. I'm still going to throw everything in because it doesn't cost me anything. I can recharge my oil. That's going to be a 2 to 1. The reason that I want to throw everything in it is because I get a second round of attack potentially if this starts working out okay. So maybe good things will happen. Get a 5. That's a little d. I got the big D over on the, what, 3 or 4 to 1, wherever. The little d says the defender loses half his defending factors, ignoring the diral modifiers. Well, half his defending factors is 4. He has to lose rounded up. So there goes one of his big 3-point units. And now the attack's much easier. I don't think my DRM-1 units can attack again, but I've got 3, 7, 10, 13, 16, 26, 27, 28, 29 to 3. So I'm way over on the 5-to-1 chart, and at +1 on the die roll because it's the second round. Boom, these guys are gone. And now I've got to replace the air units, and we're going to have another exploit coming through here, as well as a bridgehead there. So now this is where things get kind of weird and tricky. I'm allowed to advance. I don't remember what zones of control do. I have to look that up. But I'm allowed to advance from the breakthrough hex up to 2 hexes away. I'm limited by my movement allowance, and I think the Italians have half their movement allowance. I think they're CTL1 units. So I could spend 2 movement points to get to here, and then I can branch out of there and send units up to 2 hexes in any direction, spending the appropriate movement points to continue. Now this is very potent, because what this can do is, if I could swing through here and say cut this hex with an attack, that doesn't look terribly likely. It looks well defended. I could then pocket these units. They'd be isolated, and they'd have a very hard time getting out of there. If there were other units which could kind of support them, they might be able to break out of the pocket without being out of supply at the point of the attack, in which case they wouldn't be immediately destroyed. Over here, maybe I'll have a little bit more luck. The problem is I don't have this strong line up against the Russian front, so I don't have, the ability to, just swing around and maybe crack and cut this whole section off. I don't think. We'll see what I can do. Obviously, the best of all cases, if you find like a single strength point or something and you can just overrun it. Although a single strength point with a DRM, well, these are weak units, so they take a DRM -1 against exploiting armor. So they actually have a problem, which might affect their ability to withstand these attacks. These are really potent. And on top of that, hey, I spend all my oil again and recover my planes. Should have done a rebase with these guys. Get them up here. That would flip them, but I have infinite oil, right? So much for repeating the same thing over and over again. I finally found it. Infantry units attacked by exploding armor get a -1 DM unless facing this, that, and the other. By the way, that 0 DM, that doesn't affect you if you're defending in your home country, so it wouldn't have, or 0 CTL getting a -1. That wouldn't affect the Russians anyway, because they're in their home country now. But I looked in 3 other places that I thought it would be: exploitation combat, the combat DMs, and something else, I don't remember where. And it wasn't there, and I thought, well, I just must have made this thing up. So this is a serious problem, because maybe there's a chart somewhere in this pile of all the DMs. I don't know. It's of course not in the one that I want, or not in the location that I want, which would be, where the combat rules are. Nah, it looks like it doesn't exist. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's hidden on the back of some rule book or another. But yeah, maybe it's on the back of the sequence of play. There's something there. Is there a DRM summary here? Nope. Okay, so anyway, I'll try to figure out where I'm hitting. So I made a couple of exploitation moves. One of them was definitely going through Kharkov here. If I didn't have the infinite oil situation, I'd have that armor in one of these hexes to complete this attack. This is only a 2-to-1 attack as it stands, but that's okay, because remember, I probably get multiple rounds, so we'll see. Over here I'm planning an attack on here. I threw all my air in there because I wasn't clever enough to have air within striking range of Leningrad, which it looks like I'm going to take because the Russians only have one unit there. When these ICs fall, as this one did, I can take that off, they go down to strength 5 for the rest of the game, which is going to significantly impact the Russian capability to produce. But we're not really going to see a lot of that in this scenario. I'm just planning on getting done with this year to show you some of the mechanisms in the attack. So I can't attack out of the breakthrough hex, but I can, well, I can't attack with the units that are in the under the breakthrough marker. I could attack with exploiting units from the breakthrough hex itself, but I've just decided to wipe this out and get a nice centralized position there. Of course, this is the fall. A lot of Russian troops are coming in. I'm still going to end up, I think, behind what I need for the end of the year, because remember, the winter turn is a winter turn, and I'm going to be in worse shape. But I will have some key things like Leningrad, and there's a possibility of a Russian surrender. I don't know the rules on that, but once we see, you know, what falls, we may see that happen, because we got this falling. Probably I'm not going to be making an attack out of these exploiting hexes. They keep their exploit markers because they stay in supply, which is why I'm, you know, I've got no worries, man. I can just charge out as far as I like, and really it's up to the Russians to get out of my way now. And that's going to be tough because I'm kind of cutting these guys' routes. They're not going to move. They're isolated. They'll be able to attack, but probably not well. And after the redeployments, this is where we're sitting. The big German breakthroughs, of course. I managed to build all my units. Didn't take many losses. I got really lucky on those exploitation attacks and on the attack coming through here. Very lucky turn for Germany. Actually, we're on the path to victory. I counted up what we have. We have we start with 4 victory point hexes, and we took Leningrad. I'm sorry, not Minsk, but Kiev. Minsk that we have, but it's not a victory point hex. Riga, and now we also took Kharkov here. So, and 2 ICs out of Russia's hands. Russia's in a lot of trouble here. Luckily for them, they've got, these aren't all coming in. These guys are just added to their force pool here. They're more crap that they can build. This, I think, gets placed. Huh. I wonder if I was supposed to have that on the board already. Anyway, it doesn't really make a difference because we're not going to get to the year start sequence. Well, I may do that just as a matter of, to show you how that works. Although Russia's kind of a special case on that. And these guys, though, are going to show up here in the Urals. And not at the beginning of the movement. I'm sorry. They show up there when I can build units, and I'll be allowed to SR them to get them onto the line more quickly. I must have my numbers wrong in terms of how many objective hexes I have, because this only adds up to 12, and I count what I have. Let's see, here's the map line. Plesty. Oh, maybe I kind of crack out. I bet you Warsaw doesn't count. Lvov. That's 2 to begin with. And I said 3. But if I'm at 2 here, add Riga, Kharkov. That's me to 4. A 5th one up in Leningrad. This is not counting Warsaw. I don't know. I had like 8 last night or something. 1. I hate looking on the map. 2. Warsaw's on the line. Let's count them. 3, 4, 5. I'm only at 6 when I count now. So I guess I need 2 more. I have trouble seeing the map line. Now, if I have 6, that means the Russians have, oh, I forgot about Kharkov. This is Kiev. So that would make 7. Why did I get 8? Is there another one? Anyway, when I count the Russians, I found at least another one. I forgot about Sevastopol. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I get 5 for them. So I think I'm at 7 and 5 as opposed to 8 and 4 at this point. So the Germans need 1 more, which is kind of important because I was considering, gee, how much of an effort do I need to put into defending Sevastopol? Well, it's the victory condition at this point. So I guess some. I also need to hold here. And I need to hold back there. And of course, I'm not... Moscow is actually threatened. I could have moved right adjacent to Moscow this turn if I'd chosen with the Germans, but I didn't do so because there was no unit in there to attack. And unlike some games which allow you to advance into an empty hex as an attack to make up for the fact that, gee, why is it I can go further when I'm resisted than if I'm not? Well, there are possible reasons for that, actually. Pursuing a routed enemy, armies do sometimes tend to go a little faster. Started pulling away with some of my Russian units before I realized, wait a minute, I got to worry about supply. In particular, the unit here has had a problem, but there's no armor here, so he was able to slip out. But these guys over here, contrary to how most war games work, they can't trace supply. Actually, this guy can. He's adjacent. He's got partial supply because he's adjacent to one of those, I think. I don't know. So that's not a full supply source, but somewhere. ZOC's shocked me that they're absolute on this. A unit or hex adjacent to a supply source may not trace supply directly from that supply source if both are in ZOC. Yeah, okay. So, indeed, these couple of units are in isolated state, which means if I can't restore supply to them by the end of the turn, they die. And that's pretty painful. Same with this guy over here. No. Ground units may not move, and if permitted to attack, they cannot advance. And I believe somewhere it says they're eliminated even after combat if they're out of supply, but maybe I'm missing that and think that's from another game. I'll have to find that to believe it. If permitted to attack, let's look at that. 30.522. Maybe that'll tell me. CTL would be dropped by 1, so they go down to 0s. I think. I don't remember when CTL goes up, but I don't think. Armor units lose their mechanized component. Yeah. Well, wait. Okay. I'm not finding what I thought I saw, which was they can attack to get... God damn it. Damn sweat. Alright, I gotta stop. No, that section was for partially supplied units. It looked... So, partial supply applies. In addition, ground units may not move during the movement phase. If permitted to attack, may not advance into combat. They're not counted on attrition, but may not advance into attacks. They may not redeploy. Okay. I think that's all I can find on it. Maybe I'm thinking about this. I don't think so, but this eliminated at the end of the post-combat supply determination if still unsupplied. I don't know where I was getting that, but I remember reading somewhere, and I've looked for it a little bit, which was that units were destroyed if they attacked out of supply. I can't find it. So we can try to cut our way out of this paper bag. And it's fairly thin, but we're trying to do it with, you know, an eraser or something. I mean, really can't play right now because it's too damn hot. It's like 80 degrees outside, but with the sun coming in through my window, I'm just dripping sweat here. I turned the AC on, and maybe I'll be able to get some game in today. I try to live without it for a little bit, but this stupid sun. So I could afford somewhat of an offensive operation. These guys have 8. They're tripled, they'd be 12. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. If I threw the air in, I'd get to a 1-to-1. I don't know. But my air could be intercepted, which means I wouldn't get it. So I think what I'm going to do is instead do the attrition attack, and I quickly add everything up. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Keep adding, I'll come back. Like I'm at 33 on the attrition table, which gets me here. Now, I have a penalty in CTL, and that's about it. So I have a -1. This time I get a 4, which is 3 counters and 2 hexes. 2 hexes is important because I'm going to select this hex and well, let me see if I can select exploiting armor hexes. I think I can. What the hell was my result? It was a 4 here. 3 counters, 2 hexes. So the first thing is the counters have to be selected. Now the Germans could select one of these counters, so I couldn't take that hex, but that doesn't really help my situation. That would break the zone of control. So with 3 counters, boom, 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 there go, you know, 3 replacement points. The hexes, I think I want these 2 hexes, and the Germans have to retreat. Now they have an interesting situation. I could retreat out to here. Okay, well, now we got to open the rule book again, because this was on a page where I can't balance the rule book in the middle, right? So we got to stop again while I look up another rule instance, because I can't just leave the rule book open to the page that I'm used to. After evaluating several rules, including the out of supply and the attrition advance rules, I cannot move this unit because these units can't advance. I can move this unit, but it could then retreat to here, which would actually maintain keeping these units isolated because the zone of control would remain here. And if I move this unit, I have to get somebody out of here to advance into here. So that's not really a positive thing. So to me, it looks like I'm not going to be able to get rid of these breakthrough markers. They don't matter after the actual effect. It seems to me that there's no way out using the attrition combat with the situation I was facing. Which pretty much means what? I again don't think that there are hexes I want to take. I could take hexes on the Finnish border. I don't know what good that does me in particular. I'm not sure I particularly want to be fighting in Finland, so advancing there won't really help me. It'll get my units further from where I need them. So yeah, I'm gonna pass on that, and I don't, post-combat, I don't think there's a hell of a lot to have happen. The isolated units are going to be destroyed, and then I get to build new units. And if I want to rebuild those units, it costs me double. So now removal of the isolated units takes place, and we got them off the board. You can see what the situation kind of looks like. I threw these guys out in the Urals, and now I get to start paying for new Russian units. And they're going to make the line look a lot better, because as long as I think I can place, as long as it's not in a zone of control. Again, I have to refer to the rule book. There's just so much in here that, you know, any game this size, you have to keep referring to a rule book. That's a pain in the ass enough. The problem with not being able to leave it open and flip through it, that's something that, you know, might be fine for a 2-page rule book or a 4-page rule book. It doesn't make any sense for something this size. They made a really horrible decision. And I think to make the game playable, you really have to remove the binding, or accept that it's going to split, and you know, just look forward to putting it in a binder. I don't accept that. It's one reason. I know some people have suggested, oh hey, print out your living rules and put them in a binder, or bind them, you know, in some cheap way, kind of like this. It's never an acceptable solution to me. I am used to your good old paper rule books that, you know, have a staple in the middle, and obviously that won't work for this. But several paper rule books covering the major systems would have worked, and probably would have been cheaper, is my guess, but I don't know. All right, and as we move into the winter phase, we can see the Russians trying to build some kind of line. I've got to defend each last victory point city, Smolensk there, Sevastopol. Obviously Moscow is of vital importance to me. You know what I didn't do? I didn't check to see if the Russians would surrender. That's something I really should do. So I got to look up those rules as well. I can remove these exploit markers, and the isolated units over here I can reallocate. I was basically able to build everything except my air power, and then I SR'd a couple of land units and the air unit, air strength point that I had still available. The reason I can remove the exploits is that the German units are all in normal supply at this point, so, you know, why clutter the map with them, right? It looks to me so far that this bonus defense line of giving up Poland didn't really buy me a hell of a lot. I'm getting some fairly significant advances by the Germans anyway. It definitely screwed up that first turn. There's no question, because the Germans had to deal with the river line, but eventually they can subvert anything. Maybe they didn't gain quite as much as they would have, though. It's hard to tell, but I don't think it was the huge advantage that it first started to look like. It's just too easy to take out that Russian line with the powerful army that Germany starts the game with. The Russian surrender is dictated by this chart here. Unfortunately, the first entry is to calculate the Russian DP level, their diplomatic point level. And I don't think there are any cards that summarize those effects. So I've good thing I don't have anything here yet. See, yeah. So I have to go through this whole thing to see. So I start with 3. I don't have 100 VRPs, so I don't get any there. So, you know, as the year goes on, your diplomatic level reduces. Okay, Russian DPs for undefended objectives. So, did I lose anything this turn? I think it's this turn. Well, did I give up any of these ICs or objectives completely? And I believe the answer is yes. I gave up Kiev completely. I gave up Riga completely. So that may be a mistake. So I think I'm going to lose 2, and next turn I lose another one for that IC. Oh, what about Kharkov? I ran into that. Okay, I think that's 3. Markov only counts alone. It doesn't count. It only counts as either an objective or an IC. It doesn't. You don't double dip. So I think I'm at 3. I don't lose anything though for losing Leningrad, strangely enough, right there. So what was my base? My base was 3, and I've lost 3. So my DPs would be 0. I have no atomic attacks, no firestorms, no oil effects yet. Unbuilt ground and army factors. Well, that's a 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 22, 23, 24, 27, 28. So I'm now at -2. How many ICs do I control? Oh, jeez. So I'm at -2 right now. Let's try to remember that. How many ICs do I still control? I control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that's the baseline. Make it 8. So 8 ICs gives me a +1, so now I'm at -1. Each Western Allied power at war with Germany. At this point, we're talking about just Britain, so that brings me up to 0. And if the result is 0 or less, Russia offers to surrender. It's game over, man. I gave up too much. And that's hard to judge, I'll tell you. That's really hard to judge. So the scenario would be over. Now I want to continue because I want to get to I want to see how the winter fighting goes, and I want to get to the YSS. And I want to do those couple of things in this scenario. I was planning for that, so I don't want to just call this. But this would have ended in a Russian surrender simply because I abandoned territory too quickly. And, you know, it's getting worse. Now, you know, I'm doing what feels like tactically the right thing in terms of, oh shit, you know, I can't maintain these territories, but you do have to actually stay and fight for those ICs apparently. And that's a good thing to learn. So even though this has ended, I'm still going to keep pushing through with the video, and it makes for a longer video, but you know, whatever. Because I want to capture some of the elements. So the first thing that happens in this turn, we're not worried about most of this, but we got weather die rolls, and that's where we're going to handle the Russian winter. I think we just roll 1 die. And we have +5 for winter. And this is during the fall, actually. We have no preparedness. We have an automatic winter level. What does that mean? I have the book open. Automatic increases. No, that's not it. Okay. Oh, Eastern Front west of the line. Okay. So, since this is the line, anything on this little slice of the Eastern Front is just an automatic 6. Okay, so we have a 9. Ground attacks against non-partisan units and offensive air operations are prohibited. Defensive support restricted to the hex in which the airface factors are based. Now, a number of other things happen, like air nationality DRM reduced by 1. Now, how does this affect the Russians? Well, the Russians have some preparation. They have a 6-point preparation. So 9 is the German winter effect there, whereas 3 is going to be the Russian winter effect. They're still affected by it, Now, unfortunately, I don't think there are any counters to mark these effects, and that's somewhat troubling. There's probably some place you're supposed to put it in all the paperwork that comes with the game. I can just note it. Winter, German 9, Russian 3. But I still have to look up what the actual effects are pretty regularly. And, you know, so the German air DRM is down to the same. The CTL is reduced by 1, and there's penalties to the German defenses. So I could get knocked back. Now, of course, Russia's already surrendered. But you can see kind of the effect of hitting the enemy back here. No exploitation. Armor is reduced by 5. Well, in exploitation, that's not a big deal. Is there regular movement affected? No, regular movement's not affected. It's going to modify attrition combat for each level of winter preparation. So the Russians have, I think I said 6. God. Maybe it says here. Yeah, the Russians have a starting winter preparation of 6. I don't know if that's covered in here, but that's as high as it goes. The Germans have none. So that's going to be a major effect on attrition combat. The winter effect level was 9 for the Germans. That means they're not going to be able to make any ground units. So that's pretty, it's going to be pretty harsh. The Germans are pretty much forbidden from doing anything offensive by the winter table, right? Ground attacks and offensive air are prohibited. So we swung into position here, and I have 128 points along the contested, you know, the adjacent to the enemy. For the attrition table, well, the attrition table runs out at 61, but like most of these tables, it has modifiers for if you exceed the bounds. So in this case, we've got a +6 modifier. That makes up for the 6-point winter differential. So I'm going to be simply rolling a die straight up. Differential and CTL, we both have the same CTL because of the winter. So we're set. And that's a 4. That's going to be 7 counters, 4 hexes. Now the Russians don't have these crappy little replacements. So they're going to have to lose basically 7 of these pieces of crap. And that's a pretty hefty removal. Because I don't want to lose anything larger, even if position-wise it's helpful. And then what was it? 4 hexes. Wow. So then after the losses, the Germans get to pick which hexes they want to look at. But the Russians have to consider which hexes the Germans might really want to take. They can't take any of these, you know, objective hexes or ICs or anything. By the way, I've removed the ICs that were captured. Theoretically, it reduces the stacking on the board and actually makes the German economic situation easier to assess if it had to be assessed. So I think that'll be a practice that I take, is I take those off, replace them with the 5-pointers, and then put them in the German position. And then if the Russians recapture, that becomes obvious, and then I put the IC back on the board, and it'll be behind the lines where the Russians can count them usually. After this may actually be out of range as well. it essentially is unneeded. I've removed both the bridge heads that were placed. After the withdrawal, after the hex adjustments and then production and redeployments, this is what we have for the Germans. I don't really have a good place to move those airborne to. And I think I moved a couple of units with big redeployments. I can just pump these over to here, I guess. They're not really helpful up there, but they're not really helpful anywhere that I can move them. I took the opportunity to move some of these garrison units that aren't terribly useful into objective hexes on the east front, simply to give a little bit of stiffness if the Russians manage some kind of if they conduct an offensive. Now there's some overstacking going on. That's okay. The Russians have their turn to recuperate from that. That they can be retreated using the attrition table and then resolve that during their own movement phase. But they do have to resolve it by that point. And attrition tables were at 58. I rolled a 2. Now, again, we have the same CTL because of the winter. 52 puts us here. So we're looking at this, except we have the difference in the winter preparation levels. So I get that 6 extra, so that puts me up to 8. So I'm going to do 9 counters and 4 hexes. So we do some significant damage to the Germans using the attrition table. I tried to contemplate, was there some kind of limited offensive I wanted to do? You know, honestly, I couldn't think of anything offhand. Mainly, I want to be withdrawing still. And Chris, doesn't matter, I've already surrendered. But also, the main thing I want to showcase that's the left here is the year start sequence, which only Russia's going to do. So we don't want to spend too much time trying to think too hard about the combat. But we will take those counter losses to show you kind of what the Russian winter can be like for the Germans, because we might be regaining some hexes. Unfortunately, I didn't stay along the Donets. I could have maybe pushed that incursion back over the river and actually been able to defend this river line if I had been more clever. I didn't really think carefully at all, even about what the attrition results were likely to be. Because this line would be a lot easier to defend than a line running back to Stalingrad there. I was mistaken. I looked up the construction rules again. I swear I looked them up before to be mistaken. It's based on the BRP base, which is what I remembered from the Third Reich, but I thought maybe they changed things rather than the BRP total. Now the problem with that is, I believe the BRP base is a changing function, which is to say, as the Russians are getting pushed back, their BRP base is being reduced by the factories, which means this is a particularly painful time to try to figure out, you know, what that base really is. With most countries, it's not as much of a pain in the ass because their base probably is generated in the year start sequence. I would say even for Russia, I would probably set it up at the year start sequence and just say screw it, and that's it. Which would mean something like the 154 base. I was using the 84 and came up with this, so I actually have some more points that I can spend. It turns out there were some little pieces that I forgot that kind of screw with this, but so the industrial centers, the German attack, each turn, the BRP value of 2 ICs is going to increase by 5. So we've had 2 turns after the attack, or 3? 3 turns, right? I don't know. Oh, no. That's after the last mobilized IC. So we're still placing ICs on the map, so they're not increasing yet. Okay, no problem. So what are we going to see for money here for the upcoming year? No, we're not going to play any of that. So we have to find the BRP base. I don't know why I'm doing this for this scenario, because so the BRP base is not recorded here. Oh, base is 45. Okay. And assuming I have this 32 extra bucks, the Russian multiplier is 20%. So let me grab myself one of these. And 32 times 0.2 means my base is going to increase by another 6 points. This is assuming I have oil, which I do right now because I haven't lost any of my oil centers. So that base of 45 plus 6, now I have a base of 51. And now Russia is an odd case because of the ICs. So then when I calculate out my BRPs, I have to add however many I have, and I don't know how many that is. One. Luckily, they're all the same value right now. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I have 8. They're worth 10 bucks each for the ones that I have, so I get another 80 bucks. Now this doesn't get added to the base, but this is going to be added to the amount of BRPs that I have at the beginning of the turn. Now what's screwy here is, this is actually the number that I use for my production value. The 1/3 production is going to be this value. Conquests, I've lost my conquests that I would have had, so I'm not going to get those. I should have been losing value for those ICs as I fell back, though. That's something I didn't do. So these guys, you know, I've lost 3 of these. I had 10 bucks each for them. Guesstimate, I don't know, let's say I lost 5 bucks for each. So actually, I should have been 15 bucks less here. So that would put me at 17. So let's go back. 17 times 0.2 is I'd only have gained 3 bucks. 45 plus 3 is 48. So my actual base should have been 48. That's just me making a mistake. And then I don't remember how many of those I had. So I gotta count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 80 bucks of them. So I'm looking at 128 would be my new BRP total. I don't add that to the 17. The 17 has been accounted for in the base. That gets wiped out and becomes growth. And so this is what I'd have. The Germans don't have to deal with that in this scenario, so I'm not going to show that. In the main game, we'll see our non-Russian BRP calculations, which are actually a little easier because I don't have to go around counting all these. It's important that I recognize that there's 2 bases in play here. There's this 48 buck base, and then there's the construction base, which is 128. Now that's important because I'm able to spend 42 per turn on buying new units. The other countries just have their base. They don't have these ICs in a special relationship. They do have these economic centers, but those are part of the base, which is to say if you lose them, you lose that off your base, straight up. It's similar to how the ICs work. I'm not sure why. So, in the old Third Reich, you didn't worry about any of this crap. In Advanced Third Reich, they added the ICs. I think these economic areas are sort of a way of trying to bring ICs to everyone without really doing so. I really don't know, and it's so much of the design philosophy of this system, which is, oh, it would be kind of neat if we could reflect the growth of the Russian economy better, so let's work this out. And then, oh, that actually makes more sense on this, but it doesn't quite work. So there was never any, you know, any singular concept of what the economy system should be, or the economic system in the game. And that's where it really falls in comparison to World in Flames. And also, unlike World in Flames, there's no, oh wow, you know, we made this special case, but let's pull back, change that, and make a new general case. Now granted, that's made World in Flames a much, much harder, you know, World in Flames has a tendency to reverse and change at least little rules quite a bit. But there seems to be a real reluctance to ever tinker with anything in this system unless you feel like you're adding some new little subsystem. But some of those new little subsystems are like, now the naval system is completely made up of these old patches that were put in. And that's just one of the factors with how this game was designed. I complain a lot about it. I have to say, I enjoyed the old Advanced Third Reich a lot. From what I remember of it. It's just, even back then, the design decisions were obviously not something, you know, not being put into place in a way that I can have any respect for. All right, let's load this up. Like I said, somewhere back in fall, I believe it was, the Russians ended up surrendering, but I wanted to give a little bit more of a view of what the winter and everything would be like, and also play a little bit more. I was not going to go 3 years or whatever through the Barbarossa scenario. I just wanted to see what would happen, enough to understand the land move. Now I have the horrible task of starting the rules on the naval. Now I've read them, but I mean starting them so that I can kind of explain them and then investigate them. All right, let's send this up.